Hi guys, today I'm actually going to be showing you how to install Centos 7 as a VirtualBox virtual machine on actually VirtualBox 6.1. So basically, CentOS is a community-driven free operating system that is basically focused on the goal of providing a rich-based platform for open source communities to build upon. So it's basically a free operating system that you can actually use for free. You actually don't have to pay a license for it, and you can deploy it for almost any use case in a private or public cloud environment. So there's basically two variants of CentOS that are actually available today. There's the consistent and manageable platform. That's the standard CentOS. That is more or less suited for it's actually suited for a wide variety of deployments. You can actually use the standard version of CentOS to set up a web server, or if you need to set up a virtualization server using Qemu, or some other Linux-based virtualization software product, or you can actually use it to run your private public cloud environment. So actually CentOS, the standard version, would be suitable for actually just that. And then there's the CentOS Stream version of the operating system, which is basically a continuously delivered distro that tracks just ahead of the Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 development. So basically, it's positioned between, or is more of like positioned as a midstream between Fedora Linux and actually Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8. And it's more of like built for the collaborators and contributors for the CentOS project who would actually like to contribute to the project and to basically be a part of the CentOS movement. So I'm actually going to show you how to actually download the OS. So open up your browser and then go to CentOS. I think it's actually centos.org. So if you just type that into your the address bar, it should actually open up the CentOS website. And then from there, we should then be able to actually download it. So as you can see, there's actually the standard CentOS Linux version of the OS and actually CentOS Stream. So at the top of the page, click on the download link and then click on the x86-64 download option. That's actually what we're actually going to download now. Okay, so you actually be presented with a page with a list of mirror links that you can actually use. I'm actually going to select the first mirror list, the first mirror actually, and then we're actually going to download the CentOS DVD ISO image file, the CentOS 7 DVD ISO image file, which is actually the first option. Yeah. Okay, so the download has begun. So we're just going to wait for this download to complete, and once it's done, I'm then going to show you how to then create the virtual machine in VirtualBox 6.1. Okay, so open up VirtualBox and then click on the new button. So this will actually open up the virtual machine creation wizard. It will actually open in the guided mode. If you want to create this virtual machine faster, you can use the what's called the expert mode, which actually presents a few options that you can quickly configure. But this is for professionals who have used VirtualBox for quite some time. So I'm just going, for learning purposes, I'm actually just going to use the guided mode. So on the name input field, we're actually going to call this virtual machine CentOS virtual machine. Maybe we can actually say CentOS 7 virtual machine. Then we're actually going to leave the machine folder as it is. I'm just going to leave it on the default selection. And then on the type drop-down menu, select Linux. Sorry about that. Select Linux. And then on the version, actually then going to have to choose Red Hat 64-bit. Then click on Continue. So on the memory size section, you actually need to configure the amount of memory that you'd actually want to allocate to the virtual machine. So I'm going to type in 2048, which is actually 2 gigs of RAM, and then click on Continue. So the next step is actually to create a virtual hard disk that will actually be used to install the CentOS operating system. So make sure that you've selected the create a virtual hard disk option, and then click on create. And then here you actually need to choose the virtual hard disk file type. You can actually choose between VDI, VHD, and VMDK. So your selection of which file type to use here depends on whether or not you want to later move this VM to any other platform such as VMware ESXi or Microsoft Hyper-V. But we're just going to choose the VDI, which is the Virtualbox disk image in this case, and then click on continue. So the next step is you now need to choose whether you'd want the virtual hard disk to be a fixed size hard disk or dynamically allocated. So a fixed size disk actually takes a bit longer to create, but in terms of performance, it's actually quite good. It's actually faster in terms of performance. But the good thing is that I actually recommend you to choose is the dynamically allocated option, because a dynamic disk actually uses up space on your disk as it grows. So if you allocate 100 gigs of storage, it actually won't consume the entire 100 gigs, but it will probably start consuming something like 2 or 5 gigs on your physical disk. And then the virtual hard disk will actually grow as the CentOS OS grows, as you add more data information to the virtual hard disk whilst you're using the CentOS VM. The virtual hard disk will actually grow as time goes on. So choose the dynamically allocated option and then click on continue. So next, we're actually going to set the size of the virtual hard disk to 50 gigs and then click on the create button. Okay, so we've actually created the virtual machine, and then in the next step, I'm then going to show you how to attach the CentOS ISO image file, and then how to actually install CentOS. Okay, so before we proceed with the installation, I just wanted to ask you guys to please like and share the video, and also to subscribe to the channel for more content such as this video. Also, if you prefer to read the tutorial, you can click on the link in the description to gain access to the article about what I'm actually doing right now. Okay, so right click on the virtual machine and then click on settings. So it will actually open up the settings page for the VM, and then click on the storage tab and then click on the add optical drive option. Click on the add button, and then what we're actually going to do is to then go to the folder where we've got the CentOS 7 ISO file saved. So select the ISO file and then click on open. Select the ISO file and then click on choose. So as you can see, we've actually attached the CentOS ISO image file to the IDE controller on the virtual machine. So click on OK, and then right click on the VM, and then click on Start, normal start. So this will actually start up the virtual machine just in the same way as you would actually start up a physical computer that you're actually installing a OS on. So once it boots up, highlight the install CentOS 7 option and then press enter. So this will actually allow the VM to actually boot up using the disk image file that we actually attached to the IDE controller earlier. So to load this part usually takes a bit of some time, but you just need to be a bit patient for it to complete its loading process. So but basically it shouldn't take more than 10 minutes to actually complete this part. Okay, so the installer is starting now. Okay, so the installer has loaded now. So on the welcome to CentOS 7 installation welcome page, select English and then select English United States and then click on continue. Okay, so on the installation summary page, you need to configure the installation destination actually. So let me just scroll down a bit and then click on the installation destination option, select the virtual hard disk and then click on done. Actually, sometimes it fails to actually save this part, so let me actually, okay, but it's actually saved it actually. Okay, so click on the network and hostname option and then set the Ethernet interface to on. Then we can actually configure a host name here. So I'm actually going to call mine the everything channel, the everything tech channel. .Soft Academy .com. Then click on apply and then click on that. Okay, so I think we're almost ready to start the installation process. Let me just do the software selection section and then we're actually going to change this to a server with a graphic user interface and then click on done. So we'll actually get a server with a GUI that will actually make the process of actually using this VM a bit easier. So it's actually checking software dependencies and actually selecting the required software packages for us to actually do what we actually wanted to, what we actually want to do. So it should take about a minute or so to complete the check. And then once the check is done, we should then be able to start or to kickstart the installation process. Shouldn't take too long though. Actually, let me actually select the disk one more time and then click on done. Because I actually noticed that it hadn't actually done the selection. Okay. It's actually saving the storage configuration now. Then once it's done, we should then be able to then start the installation process. Okay, still it's actually checking for software dependencies. So the unfortunate, okay, so it's done now. Okay, so once it's actually done, click on the begin installation button. So we actually start installing CentOS, and then we're actually going to set a root password for the root user account, which is what I'm actually doing now. Then click on done, and then on the user creation section, I'm actually going to call myself administrator. That's the username that I'm actually going to create. And then I'm then also going to type in my password for the administrator account. Let me actually just confirm that and then click on done. So we've actually set a root password and we've actually instructed the installer to create a user code administrator once the installation is done or during the installation process. So in the next step, I'm actually then going to then show you how to install Virtualbox Guest Editions software for Virtualbox. And I'm actually also then going to show you how to install the Cockpit server monitoring software for CentOS. Okay, so once the installation is complete, what you actually need to do is to restart the virtual machine. And then once you restart the VM, we're actually going to do three or four things. We're going to install the VirtualBox guest editions for CentOS. We're then going to install system and package updates for CentOS, and then we're then going to thirdly install the Cockpit server management software for CentOS. So on the login screen, enter the password that you actually configured during the installation process, and then click on the unlock button. So this will actually then give you access to the CentOS system. So to install the guest editions software, click on devices and then click on the insert guest editions CD image button. Yeah, it's actually CD image button. Once you do that, you should get a pop-up message telling you that the CD image contains software that is intended to be automatically started. And then it will ask you if you'd like to run it. So click on run and then type in the password that you actually configured during installation and then click on authenticate. So it's actually then installing the Virtualbox Guest Editions software for CentOS. So what the software actually allows us to do is to it will actually enable features such as full screen mode. You can actually display this VM in full screen mode, and also additional features such as USB 3.0 and the like. So if you're running this VM on a host that supports USB 3.0 and similar features, then you actually get that with the Virtualbox Guest Editions. It actually also allows you to create what is called a shared folder, which actually allows you to gain access to files and folders that are on your host computer from the virtual machine. So I'm just waiting for the installation process to complete, and then we're actually going to restart the virtual machine. It shouldn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes to complete, depending on the performance of your virtual machine. So the installation is done. Then what I'm actually going to do is to restart the virtual machine. Okay, so whilst the virtual machine is starting, I actually have a document that I actually wrote, that I actually came up with, that contains all the commands that you actually need to run. And I'm actually going to then also put these commands in the video description, so that if you can actually check in the video description for these commands. So I'm actually opening the document now, and then I will actually use that document when the virtual machine startup process is complete. So the virtual machine restart is done. So I'm actually going to log back into the VM, and then I'm actually then going to use this document to run the commands. So this is the first command that actually needs to be run. First I actually need to connect to the VM via SSH. So let me just see if I can actually get the IP address of the virtual machine and then connect through to it using my SSH client or application, or actually it's actually the terminal application actually. So the first thing to check for the IP address, I'm actually going to open the CentOS terminal and then simply run the command ifconfig. So that will tell us the IP address for the CentOS VM, and then I'm actually then going to try to connect to it using my terminal application on my Mac. So it's SSH administrator at 192.168.7.182. Okay, so I'm just going to say yes, and then press enter, and then the password again for the administrator user account, and then I am actually in. So first command that I'm going to run is sudo su, so that I will elevate my rights to the root user. Okay, so I'm actually connected to the CentOS virtual machine now, and then we're actually then going to run the commands in this document. So the first command is yum install apl release, which I'm just going to paste in that command and press enter. So let me see if it's actually going to find that package that I'm actually looking for, and then we're actually then going to actually install that. I just have to wait for it to actually finish the process that it's actually doing. So type Y and press end, then hit Y again. Okay, and then it's done. So that's the first command. Then the second command that we actually need to run is yum update and press enter. So it's actually updating system and package updates that are actually on this CentOS virtual machine. So we just have to wait for that command to complete, and then we are then going to run the next command, actually, which is actually a reboot command for the VM. Okay, so we've successfully installed the system and package updates. So I'm just going to then check what the IP address is for the virtual machine, because at times when you restart it, the IP address can actually change. So I'm just going to run the command ifconfig, and as you can see, the IP address is actually changed, and it's actually now 192.168.7.182. So I'm actually going to reconnect using my terminal application using that new IP address. So it's going to SSH administrator at 192.168.7.182. So I'm actually going to type in my password, and I've actually successfully logged in. So I'm just going to change to the root user account. Okay. So the next command to run is this command, which is yum install Cockpit. So that's the server management software that we're actually now installing. So I'm just going to paste that and press enter. So it should automatically download the package that we're actually intending to install. I'm just waiting for it to actually install the package in question, and then we should actually be good to go to actually install. Okay, so just press Y and press enter. It's actually now downloading the Cockpit package, and then after it's done, we're actually going to run this command to actually start the Cockpit service. Okay, so it's actually now installing Cockpit, and it should actually be done just about now. Okay, so the installation is done, and then I'm just going to copy the next command, and then I'm just going to simply paste it into my terminal window and press enter. Okay, and then the next command is systemctl enable cockpit.socket. This will actually configure the Cockpit service to run as a system service, so that you don't have to start it each time you restart the CentOS virtual machine. And then we need to add a firewall exception for CentOS for Cockpit in the CentOS firewall by running that command, and as well as this last command. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, let me just copy it again and paste it back into the browser, into the terminal, sorry. Okay, I think there's an error here. Okay, alright. And then the last command is to actually reload the CentOS firewall by running that last command there. So I'm just going to paste it in and reload the file. Okay, so we should be good to go. So I'm just going to try to connect to the console. So it's 192.168.7. Let me just check again the IP address. So it's actually 7.182.182, and then the port number should be 9090. So I'm just going to append HTTPS at the beginning there. Then I'm actually going to try to connect. Okay, so it seems like it's actually working, and it's actually now asking us to log in. So the username I'm going to use is my username administrator, and then I'm just going to type in my password real quick and then log in. Okay, so and there we have it. We've actually successfully logged into the server using the Cockpit server management software. So here you can actually run commands using the Linux terminal, the web-based terminal actually, and you can even check your firewall rules. You can edit your cell Linux policies. You can actually check Linux services if they're actually running. You can actually get a list of system services that if they're actually running from here. And you can actually configure networking. Actually, I think this is the okay. So it's got the 7.182 address there, and then this should actually be the side of the Virtualbox host-only adapter that's also attached to this virtual machine. And you can actually check system logs as well as an overview of your CentOS system as well, including information such as your host name, your CPU performance, memory, disk, and networking traffic. So it's a really handy server management tool that you should install on almost every Linux-based system that you deploy in your environment. So there you have it, folks. This is how you can simply deploy CentOS 7 as a virtual machine on VirtualBox 6.1. I really hope that this tutorial has been informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.